Okay.
Lasso, tangazzo. Che buja. Ah. How long is it? Oh, there's delay coming.
Geshe delay.
Oh, there's delay. Oh, yeah. I think I'm going to go to the Oh, I three. Revala loma shi rewa chimbu rewa. Ngemani tele rocha son gonda chato yon rewa.
So we're going to go ahead and get started. We're very hopeful that today the power won't cut out. The last two times the power has cut out kind of right as we started.
Last one, teni ngacho katsa kenya ngemal tan margo. Tusam gosam de jetsawa yimbachi. Tri ni zon tengani tusam gosam gikapsa chamba ta shi tenser zeyatni mandrogiya. Tengema chijere da lot chendora.
So last time we talked about the three hearing, thinking, and meditating. This way of understanding, way of studying. And now we're going to talk about mindfulness and introspection in the context of hearing, thinking, and meditation. And this is actually we did this before, but because the power went out, the people online didn't get to hear it. So we're sort of reviewing this again.
Last ta tusam gi kapsa chamba ta shi tenser ze on di ta so ngel tusam gosam che gore ta na chu nyamlen chenge chi na tusam gosam pa te che gore ze gore o ta te che wala ti kabla kar ke chembo chi gore ze na so chamba ta
شنو تباتيت
chilaps makola mare
اخني موجودات
yesamara no chamba ta shi tentang ga thablam den do she gore nga so nyamlen che pi kabla tusam gosam da nyam de chamba ta shi gyarwa ta ke chembo ti she gore ha.
So when we talk about hearing, thinking, and meditating, or we can talk about, we also call that learning, contemplating, and meditating. So in the context of these three, it is very important that we practice, that we understand what mindfulness and introspection, or the book actually says mindfulness and meta awareness. We understand what these are and that we apply these in the context of these three.
Penda wa chikin goni nga tsun sension de chile gyani shina pena nga so ngema tusam gosap che gore se jocha chile tusam che gosap che gore pena na chuni shepi tenje taw ta ni je taw tani chigla tomar tusam gosap che ni tombo tenje zya to ngun ni se rendu mundu ni je zya te yemya so chik ta ke che te re yona ti shalom bat so che gora sonza ta
so when we think about, we can make an example here. For example, when we're studying or trying to understand dependent arising or compassion in the context of hearing, thinking, and meditating, under what we're doing here at the beginning, hearing, it's literally it's hearing in Tibetan. We could also think about it as studying or learning. And so at the beginning, what we're doing is really, what is compassion? What is a dependent arising? Really just sort of getting information about these two concepts.
Tanda nanchu no tender ze dia ta tomba ni ze ta hajan ni ta chimbo chi she de ore ta tendre ka ke cha ta yadon ni zamuli le thani te yo na me na mashim ka hajan ha ko me ma to hajan chap chimbo ro ta pe na nga chu mambo chi ka ha ko dia chi la nga chon ro mi ja ta chon do che wala nga chon zamu so ma life ma se ki wala tanda Carlon rawo tante ni chen rawo tante so samal tingwa tanga so samal ko ni Carlon sama zo gori te so da po de shinal da po ja gori te she gora te kar si tinga so ten satel ten de go yo son sa ten de ra pa chi ngo ni chi na ten.
So the concepts of dependent arising and emptiness are very important in Buddhism. It's important to understand these. And so when we think about, for example, dependent arising, we can think about it on this rough level, this first sort of understanding that just in the way that we live our lives, in the way that we make a living, right? We depend on all kinds of other people for houses, for work, for jobs, whatever. We're constantly living independent on other people. And so that's whatever we're doing, we're depending on other people. And that's a very rough way of understanding dependent arising.
Ani tin ni such dana pen and drumjin raw kan royan raw chishena te sanga so peshan raw chiona gormon chi so liona ani teleteni motan raw namjin raw ta kan tharin do kan ro gona hachang tab de pon raw chani te ore kese phasho ko drummer ka nam draw da mo draw tin ten sa chi me na so pesha ringo rena jin chi yo na ya pen to mare on ta kin so ya the parts tu dia tin cha chong chong de shin ro.
For example, if we're traveling or we're taking a trip, right? And when we travel or we take a trip, we have to buy things. We have to buy tickets, money. We have to constantly having to use money to do these things when we're traveling. But even if we have money, if we don't have these other people, these people that we're relying on, this money does us no good, and we can't actually go anywhere or do any traveling. So you can think about this in a way that we're dependent on these other people. Even if we have the money, the ability, we need the people that we rely on to do things like traveling.
So now just get the so pesha ching tang sa ti ni yen sha chini pa sho ko ngo ni tel kale chi ja wan ro chi so sa lo ma to so pesha tang mo che sha chini ye pesha train yin ni ni pa chi yen sha ro chini pa sho ni zo ro pan chi che yo pa sa lo tang go ma yen na tem je ya ta pa ni ka tem to sa pa sho ni che ro pa chi wen ni pa ro pa chi go ina ten ji ga sa lo ta ni yo da yo re ro yin na ta nyong shu ro
Nam
Namgin na Pashol Chesavlo Tangamari, Langa Kati Chimbo Chizoyo, Yasho Riti Langa Zoe Kavla, Kati Kalijan no Mombo Kalija.
So normally when we do things like traveling, we don't really think about how much other people are working, how much we're depending on other people. We give people money and we get what we need, and that's kind of the end of it. We don't really think about us as sort of depending on each other, right? The person who gets the money, of course, probably needs the money, and we're depending on what we're getting from them. So we have this mutual dependence, even though normally we don't really think about it that way. Normally we just sort of go about our life doing what we're doing and sort of buying things.
I mean, that getting so so nima tabala and chiga tan combat chalata so yimbari mu the china so dropo pama lekachero that and you matama leteni de or koso mena so young. Ni me patenti teni de opare.
That's what the Jalamambo
that's two at 10 days such so na mise and tropos and our lekachero and our tati korikumo shipatin chigu tongon the sol teni de ores.
And so also just in our normal lives, of course, we have our families, our friends, our acquaintances, the people we work with, and all of these people around us, right? Without these people, our happiness really depends on these people. Like really, without these people, we not only can we not sort of live our lives, but we're not happy. So we, just in our normal life here, we depend on other people.
Anthony, temre kaja tali tharashena tani soso ndo chigla sawlo tawni nin thamo she on ta soso tayo nga zini soso nga ndo chizini de ore ta soso kamba ta lapa ta ngota nyita ninda loa ta chimba ta so leteni ta nga zia ta de ore mungtini pa te sona yo mare.
So, and now to talk about, that was a sort of a rough understanding, the coarse level of dependent arising. To talk about a slightly more subtle level of dependent arising, we talk about the self, the I, right? And so the I, of course, depends on all of these parts of the body, the arms, the legs, the liver, the different organs and things. Without those things, the I wouldn't exist as well. So you could think about that in a different level of dependent arising.
That's what Tini pa da pa tsini tak tik sona nga pateni tato tsena ka undo nga tsu nga zia pa tsi ndo sona tato tsi sona na chu gu jung na le tse sona pa nga zia chi ta tu nindere zia tse sam nya mandu ze go ta te nya me pa ta nga tombare ze dia ke cha ta tri ke nga mere ze go mar tenre nga tombare ze ta ni ko achi ban chi gol le go.
So in Buddhism, we talk about sort of this idea of searching for the I. We're trying to find what is the I, and we sort of search in this specific fashion for the I among our parts, and we can't find it. There is nothing that can be found that is the referent object of the I when you search for it ultimately. And so this is one way of understanding emptiness. This is what we're talking about as emptiness. And in emptiness and dependent arising, we should understand it together, that they're related, that they're sort of two sides of the same coin, that they're not separate.
Also, tanita tejo zu jo cha ta tomba ni ke cha ta ma tenje ke cha ti yam. Tanda tenje ko ngani ta so tenji samlo choyong ni ta cha chembo nan zambu li ti chena chongje ta to tsaduna so topo ta nami ta kimsa chama le teni dewa sonsa. Te cho chama ngal pen to ni kyang yang ba ha ko gore te mu ni se re ma de mi chi ko ta jo mar. Sama ngal ro pa che de
Yeah.
ta ko gore se.
So it's really important to remember and to understand that all of these things, that we depend on our friends, our teachers, the house, all of the things that we buy, everything around us, we are living in dependence on all of these things around us. And remembering that is really important.
Ani nima ta pa tsayang pen to ko re la phayang pen to ko yore nga so te chi pa chi kyong so pen to ana je phaya sin to phan se ten ni de yo sa ani ting go ni je ngol pa sam lo chi ta na ani chi sam lo chi ta ro dang ni ko li yo samba kan ya chi che na che u pa chi re la te ren thang dem ba chi res kar zi ti ko le te ni ngal de ki mom bo ta ti do sho ni ka nga ya mom bo te te yo re wa ina ta de ki mom bo chi che go re nga so ta goya ta na de ki ye son ta de ki ke che ta nga so ta lam chi che ka nga ya che ta che ndu ta ta te ja sho samba ga sam lo chi le to na ni je ngol sam lo de ya po chi le to re sam.
So when we talk about depending on all of these things, really what we should think about is all of these things that we're depending on are helping us, right? And so then we also are helping them. So we can think about this relationship as sort of mutually helping each other. And when you think about this, you can think about this really, then you can think about this compassion. This is a good way to begin to understand sort of compassion for others, because they're helping you, you're helping them, you're really able to sort of generate this mind of compassion. And that's really important. Of course, it's true that also dependence on others, we other people can cause us what feel like problems for us, and they can get us annoyed or whatever. So people can sometimes also create problems for us, but that's also a basis for developing compassion.
Also, so that nema tani chi nga so ge tani chi sonyo. Ta tani chi na nga so pa shok ngal kangi ya chen do ndu pe yan to kon do ni cha che de ndu ta kin ne kol ni jin ro tani che go ya kare yore ngal pen no pa kia ma to no pa kia ta pen to wa chi ban ro chi re sam na tani sam no ta yo ma res nga so pa shok le yan de kin dong ke re nga yan de kin dong ke re pa shok ya ding ngam dong ke re nga yan ding ngam dong ke son sa so to ngoni na pyo chen chi na Ranger Tamal, Dekin do Pichi, Ninja, Shola Salotana, Yakarema, Ranger Kangal, Kangichi, and Chotoka, and one Nadia control us of Cholan. They no.
So when we talk about why we would have compassion for people that are helping us and people that are hurting us, and we're not saying that people that are helping us and hurting us are the same. Really, what we should understand is that everyone is equal in that we all want happiness and we all want to avoid suffering. And whether someone is whether you perceive someone as helping you or hurting you, really all that person is doing is in their own way trying to have happiness and avoid suffering. And if they're doing something that's hurting you, then they're under the control of these negative emotions, these afflictions like anger, jealousy, pride. And it's because of that they're doing something negative, really. And so you can have compassion either way, right? You can have compassion for the person that's helping you, and you can have compassion for the person that's hurting you because of these afflictions.
And then you talk about so not so now the Ninja or Yamlin Chena. So when Chile you Nami down, Tropo down, and get low to Leka Cheroina. That's all the Chani Ninja Goma to Tada. That's all Ninja Gombal and Beto Chena. That's all showing Ninja Gom Topsona, Samalakatina Ninja Captain Tanipa, since a tenchas in Natson Jewashata menu, Telepajakia, Lila Polo.
So when we start meditating on love or compassion, it's really helpful to start meditating on the people around you, people that you like, your family, your friends, your acquaintances. These people, because it's easier to generate real compassion for these people. And then from there, you can sort of begin and go out to all sentient beings, to all people, to people you don't know. So you start with the people that are close to you and work your way out.
That's what I'm going to do. Chakto chesa, Kondro chesa, Narger chesa, Ransim chesa, Tama, and Naruto, Moshiba Nali, or Momishia Sal, Kondro Kian, sometimes you get it, and Yono Shui.
So among the people that we know, among our acquaintances or our friends, of course, there are people that we develop that there are people that we are angry at. There are people that make us jealous. There are people that we generate pride. There are people among our acquaintances that we generate all of these afflictions. Oh, that's a word. How would I translate that? Well, anyway, there are people that we generate these afflictions for, that are sort of the object of these afflictions among our acquaintances. And then, of course, people that we don't know, it's maybe it's possible that we could generate anger or something to someone we don't really know, but it's not as common. It's really the people that are close to us that we're generating these negative emotions toward usually.
Ottendi do chigata temje goni temje samlo tani ni ngaso niji chena yakare jamba no sem chena yakamare sambi gata ngaso jaman ri sheore ta tani do chig so lale tarnye yena nyamni che samna ta nyama ta pa samlo ta tani niji mantani nyamni che wa tandi wa ta tandi che wi kavla kar ke chembore zena ta tamba ta shijini ke chembore joking amoni yalang wi kavla nga temje samlo tati goni ninje ngol samlo de undu e pa sholo control ngol ji de undu e tandi zabzab chini take tande ni tele shijen la de tingol ma mantani de tona trembari samlo tingol.
So when we talk about the actual practice, what we would do, see the practice of meditating on compassion or the practice of meditating on dependent arising, really. So how does this relate to mindfulness and introspection? So for example, in the morning, if you wake up and you sit down to meditate on dependent arising, or you sit down to meditate on compassion, right? It's the aspect of mindfulness or remembering. The word in Tibetan actually is remembering. As I Trimba, it's the same word they use in just spoken language for to remember. So it's really the aspect of your mind that stays solidly on your object of meditation, right? It's what keeps you there. And then introspection is the aspect of mind that is sort of seeing what else is going on. It's like, do you have anger? Do you have jealousy? Are you going off onto something else, right? So you have these two aspects of mind, and they're really important for keeping you in your ability to actually meditate on something like compassion or.
Jengi zia the tamba dosho taro. Tamba yakpo majona jengi kuma kenyo sis. Ngoni toni tingaron do china ngema jaya mambo jema kuma kisaja.
So there's a saying in Tibetan that our inner good qualities a thief cannot steal, but your forgetfulness, the object of what we call mindfulness and introspection, objects of mindfulness, really remembering. So your forgetfulness can steal your good qualities.
Taso sonsa tangatso kyurutso zopa gom zopi nyamle chege yona re tanda ni chege nyamle cheba yena re ta tenam jeng nyamle changchok pesem da so nyamle kan de chena nyin tawpal ngatri nyamle chengke chi yen sambi tamba de tembo zoya ani ten ni tamba ta ta de mundu samni ge shirami ka te ta yidanga son tomna teni transition to some capacity just tensor te yakpo chawari.
So if every day, it's really wonderful if you can meditate on compassion, on dependent arising, also on bodhicitta, any of these things. Really, if you can meditate every day, that would be really wonderful. And when you do, having this mind that's able to, this mind of mindfulness that really keeps you on your object, and then having the introspection that's sort of checking and making sure that you're still on the object and seeing what else is going on in your mind. Really having those two is what will allow you to be able to meditate.
That tramba ta shi zena chigu samlo zra nin raw chi shawar nga tsone ma petin ji mota ta wi kabla tangi mota ta zabza tango samdi lagpa ta zazan ji ni samlo tingol chi jakayore ni samlo zr chi zr ni mi yongandu mundu gad mota ta so yongandu mundu chi tagayor zr la ta de ni tal shi jen la ke wor buki tembo che de ni tal tramba la de wor teni ji khabar.
So for example, we can make an example to further illustrate the difference between mindfulness and introspection. For example, when you're driving a car, if you're driving your car, mindfulness is the aspect of mind that just keeps you on the steering wheel, keeps you focused on driving your car. Right? You're not forgetting you're driving your car. You know you're driving your car. Introspection is the aspect of mind that's sort of watching for anything else going on, like a cow or something jumping in front of the road. It's keeping track of everything else.
Naso tani do chigre tandini ma tu sam go sam go ka sa tramba ta season ta so ke chi kimsen ta so le komombo chi son jan de tema te chi ju ya kombo ta do jachen ro ba na san ji korong go son rendo tramba le pa nyev ja te shirab le par gomjina shivjan ta na kyo chi pa longan kyo chi chajik chazang go ta Gongo tere. Oh, there. Takarla worezena ngacho do jachin de no ta ngacho nyamle che because takishia no ni jen re nyamle che na ni je tingol tamba ta shivjin ta so yapo chi ja ni nin ta pa te ja thup so na tani tin nam ya pa sho la no simla so pa ga sam lo che yong chi ko mares a longen chu chi chi cha de ni je khate longen to no sim rawa no sim tawa ni yong chi ko mari tan shi ji ni jengol lo de yapo ja to na dem ni joking am shi ni je te sam lo ta ni tan shi jeng ge ni la chi ja na ni je zia koro cheng mari ni ma ta pa le ni no sim to mo bo le yong res on do ti ko ma te re sha.
So we're going to go ahead and we're working from a text here, which is the Thupten Jinpa and His Holiness's what is it? Philosophy and Science and Philosophy of Indian Buddhist Classics about the mind. And so we're going to go ahead and read here. Geshe, we read a quote which from the Great Place Sutra. It's a quote from the Buddha. Having skillfully applied mindfulness and having well cultivated wisdom, I will act with meta awareness. Evil mind, what will you do now? So the explanation here is this idea that if we are able to hold something like compassion with mindfulness and introspection, or mindfulness and meta awareness, the opposite of compassion is this mind that wishes to harm other beings has no chance to come in, right? So as long as we're really meditating and holding something like compassion in our mind, the opposite mind of the mind that wants to hurt someone else could never come in. However, if we do the opposite, if we wake up and we don't have mindfulness and introspection, and we don't think about compassion, or we think about it for a little while, then we just quickly forget about it, then of course, these afflictions, this, for example, in this case, this mind of ill will enter your mind.
That's what any the author yang kyonji ko that's what ani tandini kyonji ko songre kyonji ko sikte so ko de po nando za pon ro zena tal nyama la le la yang pon do shi je me pisem dam bi tout en samba gomba yang londre pom bi chevjen chamba la ne tema ni sitandi kar ze wo tinga so nam ji chi nyamlen ro che ta lo jong chamba le yang chi ba re la nyamlen ro chi che de na yang chamba ta shi jen ge yang po si ma song na te so chama ta ki sha na je jen ro gre chola ro ja khares pe na nga so na chu le tu sam go sam chi na ge den ge chamba ta shi jen ge so ma to na yom ko jen ro gre se lo chi ni ma ta chi ni ge me pa ri ro gre pe na nga so kub do lu pam na le chu lu na
So next there's a quote from Engaging in the Bodhisattva Deeds by Shanti Deva that says, in one whose mind lacks meta awareness, what has been learned, contemplated, and meditated on does not remain in mindful recollection, just like a water in a leaky pot. So here the idea is, and this isn't just about Buddhism, really, this is about anything you've learned. You go through this process of, in Buddhism, we talk learning, thinking, and meditation. But really anything, if you do not have sort of mindful recollection of what you've done, then you just lose it. And the example here is a pot with holes in the bottom, and you pour water in it, and immediately it goes out.
Last, tatini ma mantani kyonji resha, naji to be mataki, linam kalam tame, but there's your mom be sent to linam kalam tame, those it so Nepan rochi yanani. Polo nipa chegan yo maleka che samna log jon che samna tandi chegan nipa yo mare zitinga na jinjire nipa yo mare te nanje ngaso sem de nyomong wang de tani tashi jinga ya bo chi ma so ni sem nyomong do charger da control aso pe wang de tanjana ani nyamlen se at na chi yo me pa nyamlen na chi zena karita che le to che le mo to atandi re lam do.
So here another quote from Shanti Deva, Engaging in the Bodhisattva Deeds, says, just as people disturbed by illness have no power to do any useful work, those whose minds are disturbed by confusion have no power to do any useful work. And so here the example is that
ta transition me na nyomong go sem tri yong ro jatan tin kon de dan do
inching na di mong ba di chamba gi to chok chaba ko re di ga
la
디갑스디 대신 몽베.
몸비 생각 봐. 몸바세 그
음.
뇨몽거 릭다 써라. 아 transition 다 뇨몽기 몸비 도초를 가서 톰바니 공거라. 톰바니를 transition 하고 맞잖아. 몸발레 옹거래. 아니 조팔 transition 하고 맞잖아. 컨트롤레 옹거래. 그 셈상 마칭인 로자 그래서. 그때 그 다인지.
네네네. 템바하고 성에 그 인제게는 어디 템바 당시신기 디자와 디스세고요 말에. So the quote says, just as people disturbed by illness have no power to do any useful work, those whose minds are disturbed by confusion have no power to do any useful work. And so the link here is that, you know, if you do not have mindfulness and introspection, then, you know, the afflictions will have power over your mind, right? You won't be able to keep the afflictions out. And in that case, you won't be able to, essentially, whatever you do will be tainted by those afflictions and will cause problems. In the same way that someone who is ill, when you're ill, it's really hard to do anything else other than be ill, right? So it's in the same way that without mindfulness and introspection, then your mind becomes controlled by confusion, here it says, but also just any affliction, and then that taints anything you try to do. Welcome, please have a seat.
Ndreba the gondel, tanga the yinchi ndreba the gondel. Kire ndreba, tinolde.
Do you?
Or ko trembal and the non Jan Trambanyam, the Yomon be simply Panjala, any cause of it, so don't Tamanyam, and that is no. Then the water Koni chits up on that nona.
Would you guys like hot water, tea?
Yeah. Then the water go bullet of the Trambanyam, Chukanjik Panjers, and the Pandasi. The Tama carries some is in an also tensions and they get them the thing go at the kitchen where is it on the sort of grass, paid on chipas on the water, go bullet of the Trambanyam, Chukanjik Panjers, I'm going in Jaborindo, and so Michila. Tramba the Obochi Mazon, non Chupo Marit, Lobjon Carachin, and also Lobjon Chevicaps, they on the Saulo Mountain, Chick Jenny, Jessom Jenny, Lobjango to Jito Chevicab, take an etegrani, Lotatoni Lekando Chindogon and Nema Jan so machinani, you chemish, Chemish, shoot chegrate, don't you buy it so much, all out the race. So Tramba the Matana.
So another quote from Nagarjuna's friendly letter, from Arya Nagarjuna's friendly letter, which says, with mindfulness impaired, all qualities diminish. So these are really all just reinforcing the importance of mindfulness and introspection. So with mindfulness impaired, all qualities diminish. And so this isn't necessarily just talking about Buddhism or practice, really. This is anything you do without this ability of mindfulness, this ability to remember, to hold things in your mind. And whatever you do, whatever good qualities, whatever you're trying to do, you won't do very well, and your good qualities will diminish.
Ani Montani Kionjigresha, Yon Kionjigli Rewa. Mato Tronipa, don't they my Matul Maton Trolli Tronipa, don't they my Panjamba, Young and Troniker, but send your man the Tata songs, the Tanaso, Namgia Nyamli Karachina, Leka Karachina, Tamba Shivinikat, Yapo, Chisoni de Shaw's, they Penda Wachijana was a polar matching Wachiona, matching Wachiona, Mimombo Yam Dandroti, a Matasoltina Nation, and Zemso Shuji is of the Chegres, they Najan, also Yamlin, they are Mombo Yam Dandroi, Kablianari, so stupid Kablianari, Lular Mason, Najan, the tension Nicalson is of the Chegores, Matako,
Mongi,
Mate Yapochi Masona. Mate Yomongo Pedro is Samartande. Mato Tree Twenty, my not so song go at the Yamlin. Yamlin the Manda which is telling Yomongo Jonko Machin is as
okay. So then another quote from Shanti Deva's Engaging the Bodhisattva Deed says, just as I take care of a bodily wound and cover it when amid a rough and jostling crowd, so too when amid a crowd of careless people, I must always protect the wound of my mind. And so this example here really is it's another example of mindfulness and introspection, and how, if you had a wound on your arm, and you were in, up there Main Square or something, right, you'd be pretty careful about what you did, and you'd be very mindful about who was bumping into you. And so in that same way, really, if we think about our practice and our work with our mind, really, we should have that same kind of care with our mind, both when we're alone and with other people. Really, we should think about it like that. like just like we would a wound on our arm.
Re tang nga to ni jen ro chu pe ja nga to ni je te zu ma chang ma li yor ni jen ro te sem chan jamba le ya chen bo chi ke go sam ni sam lo tong bo sem shi chi chi ani ro wi kap sa sam lo ting go le ka ti na jan ni ma song song chi ni ngen tao pan ro ta ni je yan ya jin ro man ro le te chong ko ro yo ma ma song na
Nasa din matin din nang sing at ninja di sungyop che ta
ni je ta ka ti na pa so kin karan chen ong ni je jang go le de go se ma song na je chen ni je ya jin ro re
so we can, for example, take the idea of love or compassion, really. And so if we held our practice of love and compassion like you would in this example, like, you know, a wound in your arm in a jostling crowd, you know, if you were really that careful with it, there's no doubt then that your love and compassion would increase because you'd be holding it very carefully, and you would always be taking the opportunity, whatever conditions arise, to practice and increase your love and compassion.
Re te ta ta so che khapo ta re ni je gom zo pa gom ze an ta so chamba gom ze ta so pe ka le kha por nga so na gi chen so na mi mambo she ta she re ta so so la le ta ron de te tre jane ni se ma ya chi ja khale te tre jane se ma ya chi kha ta yo mar ta ta ko ro ba so che tong gi chi na ta da kyon ji na jin chi che to na pe ya mo do
so of course, you know, this is hard to do, right? And we normally, if we meditate on love, compassion, bodhicitta, any of these qualities, we meditate for a moment and our mind runs off, you know, or we meditate for a moment and our mind runs off. That's okay. That there's no fault there. Okay. We're not, you know, this is the point here is not the point here is really to make great effort toward this. It's not that we have to have a stable mind the first time we meditate. That's, you know, really the point is to really work at it.
Also tani mentani kyonji kare shata tipari tonda chupa imbala pe mandawi guni kyonji le yer tara talon chana jipi nyet lemba ta tevje chambin chon shorna nyalwin jigni nyarwin jikta myet to lance tande nyawal pe jar shata non chu jarwa tanga so pena mandre chi jawi kabla tanga so musita ma ja satin da pichar to so na temot so na tora mini jawi ndaw shorna menda to sale shwa ta sale shorna namsa te fi ratani tani chengdo te chengdo se ya ni menda ta mi la pa shonro chat mi la pa shonro sam ni shiuchi toncha ta songundo te na je re nga so nyamli che pi ka kya chamba ta shi ji ni tan toncha ta wa cha de ores ka sa chamba ta shi ji ni shor sona ani ma jawi ka toncha me ata chikpa yin sonta anga chamba ta shi ji nyam ni nyomong wan de sona ngal kare yong res ani se chmala nyawa ta tanji ge dinga yong res tandi na la nyawa jarndu ta nyawa jam go da nga so tsendal sa lo ta da kha ko ota tombo te la ta jama
Another quote from Shantideva's engaging in the Bodhisattva deed says, if someone drops his sword in battle, he immediately picks it up in fear. Likewise, if I lose my weapon of mindfulness, then recollecting the fears of hell, I must quickly retrieve it. So, for example, right, if you're watching a movie or we see lots of battle scenes on movies or TVs or whatever, and somebody drops their sword, and of course they immediately are like diving for it, trying to get it, pick it back up, right? And so this is the example here is that this weapon is your mindfulness, and you want to, as soon as you realize you've lost your mindfulness, you need to grab it back, just as if you were in a battle and someone was attacking you and you'd lost your weapon, right? Because when you lose your mindfulness, of course, then you lose, you're open to the afflictions, and then you have the potential of going to these hell realms.
Also tandi nyawa kacha shor kita nyawa shena man pata man nga so na chu shena nga so kya nga chu kelengore tani kya chamal nyomongo wan sona ni nyawi dingar yata ka dingar ro dingar la so bata melke na em le kipo ma yong getri kya keje shegor ate jira chite mai na ta nga so nyima ta pan do cha kontro ngar jan trato desem tani kya jan chinin ro dena kipo ndo so jipcha chi sablo ta nga so na gi sablo tang mere ma ta nga so kipo me ya sama so na ni sablo ta tang chi de ge et kipo me pa koron le sam na kyon na chi te li do te sem je de nga le ja trato ma chen desem ma che ani ma so len den da ma che so sem je de ka se pap so na so in
Buddhism, of course, we talk about past and future lives, and we talk about the hell realms, we talk about the hell beings, the hungry ghosts, and the animal rebirths. And so in this is one way we understand that these afflictions will cause rebirth and these bad migrations. And So here we're talking about wanting to avoid that, but you don't have to talk about past and future lives really to understand the danger of losing your mindfulness and coming under the power of these afflictions. Really, if you, even just if we talk about our normal life, if you are under the power of hatred, jealousy, pride, anger, great attachment, right, you're not going to be happy, right? Any one of these things, when it arises in your mind, it makes you unhappy, it makes the people around you unhappy, it causes you problems. Likewise, if you don't have these in your mind, if you have a mind that is free from jealousy, free from attachment, free from anger, then you are happy and you make the people around you happy. So both in terms of past and future lives and in terms of this life, if you don't want to think about the hell realms in the future lives, you can understand the importance of staying mindful.
That's what I need to see. That Pendra was in a young Kyonji section to the Rejik Tombunda Decem, then Kyonji Chinis, Tetse, Daki Shijenda, Zonta Parnami Percha, the Shindon Pejardo, that Sonta, Tombo Soso Khan, Yamlinche Guat, taking us on Elshia Naja, Tendrego Corni Nije Savlotana Rayon, Dajanyam Jengoni Chancho Kusem Savlotana Rayon, control Drawat and Richet in Angaso Kalendu Sami, Zopal Yamlichenari, Toma. So when you conchendo patitata,
So here's another quote from Bodhisattvas engaging in the Sankti is engaging in the Bodhisattva deeds, and he's making an example here of wood. It says, at the outset, first recognizing that my mind has faults, I should remain controlled like a piece of wood.
Tombo so Yamli che Goya the Karayanaro, John the Pena control the Kyonreshas, me control Chegame, Zopa Gombians, then Jela no pat the Kyonresha, the Kyonlishi, Nijigo Nayakandu, and Bisoso, Tombo, the Tembe Chesho. Tombo Tete Hakosaro, Hakosartitani, Ingola sound of Tembo, Johnny Deshoff, she knows that. So when
we first start meditating, really, we should think, okay, well, we should think about, okay, these are the faults of jealousy, right? These are the faults of hurting others. These are the benefits of compassion and love. And so the comparison to wood here is this idea of it being stable. So in the beginning, we have to really make these minds stable. This mind that says, oh, compassion is really important. Jealousy is going to hurt myself and others, and so you meditate on these things, and like a piece of wood or a tree, you have to become really stable.
Su semba tingol tempo de shola tika petreta matoje, report kashi shina jeni de teyo maro. Su te semba tata Nijengo Zopangolina Zopakoti Kolata, tempo che shola de.
And so of course here we're talking about our mind, and we're not saying you have to keep your body, although it's good to keep your body stable, but really we're talking about keeping your mind on these objects, really at the beginning making a real effort to stay stable and make a determination to stay on these objects.
Yeah,
what happened there?
Yeah, lots of much.
Yeah. Does this have like
Wow, wonderful.
Is that better or worse?
It's the same. It's wonderful.
It's the same. Sorry. Oh yeah, there you go. Do some. Yeah, what did you? Can get some? Oh, there. Oh.
Tandiniman Dordim Dorna, Mishipata Pome Panama Soki Nyomoli, Gerando Pistiva, Chamba, the Shivjan Chester, Teniana, Kyonjilis, Takason, Natso, Monigo, Nyomon Bidali Gerdon, Nyomon Pal Kyontani, Dosokonyamli, Donichina, Carchesho, the Takars, Cheba, Mangamang Associated. Ando cha control dia so já tinha ato aqui na que pondu samna ando só che chi tomero kasu teme ato so ngoni ngaso kangi che de gona tandrigo mi chi ka karche gore na yomar kwawi no karla chacha topi chong date sao no so dingi patar terji changi tevje chobo ze ondita ngaso pe tandri chi gawori mi chi la Lapana no chechikana market sapotaba, Zumchinita, Lapatagro, that Zumnipini Pandro shows. Carsiki market to Pachik Salazata, Ratri Segi Zena, Muti, Lapa Kazitana Seal Genida, Zavza Shuchin in Dogres. Sonta Tina, so Yama Tapala, Dorchatan control, and Nadia La Sopa, Chigo on the catching Donayo, marketing Patrick Salazar, Najinatsu Tin Jebutala, Nyawata Dina La Sopa Mombo, Shuchi Nyonson, catches chick down. To Pachi on your Mongo and drove me, some big this was over Tamjando, Sound Chinity, Matapal, Ali Gorezia, Teresha, Mount of
So, I'm going to read from the text again. In brief, how does someone wanting victory over the mental afflictions such as ignorance, heedlessness, and distraction apply mindfulness and mental awareness? And so, you should really think about this, of course. In your mind, you look at your mind and understand, right? Do these afflictions observe? Do these afflictions, when they're in your mind, do they cause your suffering or not, right? And really sort of be aware of the effect of these afflictions on your mind. And if you see that they're causing you suffering, then that will help you remember it. If you think they're not causing you suffering, then, you don't have to worry about it. But, and so there's a quote from Engaging the Bodhisattva's Deeds, from Shantideva's Engaging the Bodhisattva Deeds, which says, so that those who engage in practice should be as intent as a frightened man carrying a jar full of mustard oil while being surveilled, watched by someone brandishing a sword and threatening to kill him if he spills any. This is an example that's used to sort of illustrate why, like how we should hold our mind in mindfulness and guard from the afflictions. And it's as if someone has given you this jar of hot oil, like hot ghee or mustard or something. It's like full to the brim and you have to like walk with it. And of course it's like burning your hands and you have to be very careful. And if you drop any of the oil or the ghee, they're going to cut your head off, right? So you, of course, if that were to happen for some reason, you would be very careful, right? You'd be walking very carefully and be very, very mindful of not dropping any of the oil. So in the same way, the idea is that we should be very, very careful of these afflictions, because these afflictions will cause us to create negative karma that will cause rebirth in hell realms, that will cause us to create, if you don't want to think about hell realms, if that's not helpful, will just cause great suffering for ourselves and others. And so we should be just as careful as this person in this example carrying this jar of hot oil as we should about our mindfulness, to not allow mental afflictions to take root in our mind.
La sotati naniga tringo lopseng jojana with the tendichiri danga so tendre on ninja gonsen rawachil salo tani pe javayin. That also now get the nido exchange ninja so kale yargi tante in tapa chambata shijan got the son of chenida, yamlenji chita kale, kale sem comes of de lene, and so kiwachimal salo tango marcendal peki boyum.
So even if we don't want to think about the next life, if we just really think about how to make this life happy, right? So we've talked in the beginning about dependent arising and compassion, really. So understanding the connection between dependent arising and compassion, and then meditating or thinking. Meditating doesn't necessarily mean sitting, right? Meditating in the Buddhist context really is just thinking in a certain way, really contemplating, meditating on compassion every day, and then practicing as well as we are able the mindfulness and introspection to keep this idea of compassion in our mind. And if you do that, you will definitely have an increase in your compassion, and that will help your mind. You will find that your mind is happier, is more stable, that you are a happier person if you are able to do that.
Tenajata zopa gomengi katina jidegiola kechemongatso kendanda mandan tripikables control malat pe mas social pen dochembo sem katejwa ka kendra mandan tero kendra mandan trika zopa gomya control malat pe mas social national pen do kale lob jonchini ta ka tamba shishim toni sonda parshi mejawa shu chayor mato aso nalo semlo so semla samlo choni matani ta phasho ningal kangiche son tingal kangiche son sani mijambal chojo chewor kangi training only so sablo ta mandini so kangiche de.
So also we can think about the practice of patience. So there's many external, what we see as external causes that can cause us problems, that can cause us difficulties, right? And so that in every time that one of those arises, really is this what you should do. It is this opportunity to practice and meditate on patience. And really the way to understand this is that there's actually nothing external that causes you problems. We always say, oh, these things are bothering me, but really it's your own mind, it's your own attitude that's causing problems. And so the way to fix that is initially through the practice of patience, of really not saying, oh, that they made me angry. Really, it's okay, I have this affliction in my mind, and so I'm practicing patience.
Ani am gashi ga sam gare tanga zopa gom dena ni jemba ngal kanya tegres to ni zopa gom ma gom mi jamba nga sea tangal doya tangal kecha dikalawat rimombo yongre samgo a kecha dikalawat tetso ni zopa gomba ta magum lala shita khabre yo ki mar sam samle tonda chekameni ni menda gyani se yo ro tate zopa gomna menda magyani ka thogre zine te thogmar ro thogmar ta zoba gomna so semke boyore zoba ma gomni control on dena so semkangir ani menda gya ta mi kecha dikya shya ta tetso zoba gomna ma gomna ka thogmar.
So when we practice patience, of course, it's not going to stop people from, it's not going to cause or stop people from like insulting us or beating us or trying to shoot us, or anything like that. Really, the important thing is that we are practicing patience, and it's helping our mind, right? So if we are practicing patience, if we have patience, so we don't get angry, we'll be happy. If we don't practice patience and we are controlled by this anger or whatever the affliction is, then we won't be happy. And people are going to cause you problems, or going to do things that are going to feel like causing you problems, regardless of whether you're practicing patience or not. So you should practice patience and have a happy mind.
Tanda kyonjing na tsi jamba chi yo ta tsi tngin ro ma so nga cho chalo ko tsa no pa king ke me pa zo go na nga cho ma sendel no pa king me pa zo to tsa wa ni yo ma res ne so na la zo pa gom yo po to na pa che chalo ni no pa chi ni me ni ta chi pa res ke ka cha di kya she na nga tsi ba za yo ma nga ke bo yo re tanda chik chik na ya nga le sem le che kang in ro tong yo ma so sa da me pa ta chi pa res pe na nga cho sa gon kanje man ro na Ferma zikrezini sa thama koa ga yogona to mare ni kambangol koa chi jarta hamko jota chi bare de ati ke kora.
So there's a famous saying from Shantideva's Bodhisattva's way of life that says essentially, we will never be able to stop all of the conditions, external conditions that might bother us or cause us problems. Like there's too many. We're never going to be able to stop all of those. But what we can do is stop the internal conditions for those bothering us, essentially. And there's an example that is made also in the Bodhisattva's way of life that says, you imagine the earth is like covered with thorns or nettles or anything sharp. You could never cover the whole earth. There's not enough leather to cover the whole earth, cover all the thorns over the earth, right? But all you have to do actually is just cover the bottom of your feet. And then it's essentially the same thing. So these are examples of how by controlling your mind, it's essentially like getting rid of all of these external negative conditions. So really, please, if you guys could just think a little, just reflect on this and think about how you can change your mind, how you can improve your mind, and how that would improve your life.
Also, jimat tago kyosam korterindu ta kama jega chimangma ndema ndra ja ja ta no re tena ngata tra challenge che sharo kama chima tamen lobse jimat tago kyosam atago kyosam da shada gepa chi chimandu tena ngata jane ga kol mare sha jane de te se jip chanda ochin ro to na te chajiyo also.
So the next topic is view, meditation, and conduct, and we'll go into that in more detail in the next time. I think right now we're going to go ahead and stop and open it up to questions if anybody has questions.
I have.
Sure.
Does it see any benefit in anger or just something that you need to put away, and useless?
Chato kongto di Q&A pinto yomare di samsam di pinto yongi.
No chungoni shena ti kuni pinto me sa ti yori roa pena control lawa yena so ga sema ke pazwa mila no kiwa tani telma narma ziyata lego ni magwan ta ni ba chimbo chi shege yor ta nga sunjik ten ngon china samsam la control on million damada pa lane ro chi te so chi jar kan chi tom na control te so pentonia no te ke bon ro chi yora ati kandilab go ha mi chi kanta na chu woni china me ba chi yore
So from the Buddhist perspective, no. Buddhist perspective, from the definition of the anger is a mind that wishes to harm other people, right? So from the Buddhist perspective, that is never helpful. That hurts yourself and that hurts other people. So from the Buddhist perspective, anger is always bad. It is, you can think of examples in our normal life, right, where somebody comes and tries to like fight you and you get angry, and that maybe that anger like sort of helps you survive or fight back. Maybe that's a sort of normal, like our normal sort of daily sort of way of thinking. Maybe anger is helpful. From the Buddhist perspective, no, it's a mind that is always harmful.
In terms of boundaries, when we feel anger, we can say, okay, now it's time to protect a boundary. It's not have to be like unhelpful reaction or something. So
Boundaries. Boundaries. Ngatu satsam jabu yore. Inenga di michiki kenangla di dukpa the gange sona the satsam parla gange digire satsam di gena controlangi yore. Yang di controlanga di ngatsugi ki duk di jupe ki satsam di sungyop chiagi ki nyenda jabu yore. Dinangshin ken samatang yore.
That's it. Kisha insara jwe.
Ngatu di chika o tenje samatang yore.
Re control ko 세직 존이다. 아서 성격 제거를
control lang나 ngatugi satsam mijiki ngatuladi satsam tetik gyosong jabu yore. Ngati ninda jabu yore.
ngatson jikten ngoni chena tene de samgora na control malani nga lolo che de dina tapso tani mari yongres. Tangi control ro chilan pa len ro chena. Ta tapso tani nyori ndogre samne te samgora. Nachu Kellen draw cowboy yenaya. Canada someone nachu suit control the Lanjana could cutting the Kato Marita Segomara. Cutting the so Makiwazo in Baro, Tigu Pasha, Makiparanjan, Makipinota Mambo Chila in Baro. That then is on take the control on the same cases on the message to Kali Makipazoni Tagi. Don't chimbo chile on a dish. Control one that nature chikati lana. Jima kati trainer, Kiboyo Marimka, Kiboji, should have changed my.
So this is not a concept, the idea of boundaries, and in Buddhism and Tibetans, it's really hard to translate and explain exactly what that means. The Buddhist idea really is this idea that if someone does something bad to you, if you get angry, the anger is just hurting yourself. Really, the anger is suffering. So if of course we do get angry, we're not like Arya beings, right? We are going to get angry, but that doesn't mean that the anger is good, right? That by getting angry, you are harming yourself, and that's probably causing you to harm the other person and just create more harm in the situation. And so that's how they think about it. The concepts of boundaries, we had a bit of conversation back and forth, and it was a little difficult to explain why you would need to get angry to know where your boundaries were. It's just not how they think about it. But really, the important aspect from the Buddhist perspective is that anger is suffering, right? So any anger that arises, this desire to hurt other people, is suffering. It's going to make you and other people suffer.
Land you Martina, Gange Mombo Jiteona. Nakyo Kishira Latin touch of that Geshem. Tabla Jamba Latin. So control the Malani, Tamla Jamba Chikite Katon and recorded, Togona and recorded Manikagona, Gojami Kanerin, and then police locate on the Candicina. 아주 때 파쇼고 노파용데 때 가타 제야 탄지고요.
Mm,
나 컨트롤 왕기 라제 칸가 먹게와 마시가 컨트롤 시디아데 수 셈나니 소소고 셈축만 레다가요 마토. 요발시라다가요.
This isn't to say though that we have to just take whatever is happening, right? If somebody's doing something to you and you have a way of stopping it, then you should stop it, right? You go to the police, you go to the boss, whatever, right? You don't have to just sit there and take whatever is happening, right? You should take whatever sort of normal external means you have to stop that action.
저도 셈바만 주가데 기보 셈바만 주나 소소 기보요로.
But the main point here is from the Buddhist perspective that all of these afflictions, and anger in particular, makes your mind disturbed. And if your mind is disturbed, you're not happy. And the whole point of Buddhism is learning how to have this sort of peaceful mind. But that doesn't mean you just take everything, right? That was what he said here was an important point. If somebody's doing something to you, you should try to stop it, right?
How do you recognize you need to stop something to have this reaction from inside of, and you don't have to translate it, just like giving some perspective, other perspective.
Well, I mean, normal, we're all going to get angry, right? We're not Aryas, or we all have afflictions. So none of us are here not going to get angry or feel the frustration. Now, kongi di chiwa di kongi sungwa di kare kandis di gang di miji ki kerangla di tukpo di tuk chena ngozun chetup kire di kongso malanga kandis di ngozun chetup kire. 미지기 기능하디 나선디 뚝체나 디 컨디션은 제기네
어때? 소소고 셈라 노 마치나 키카르람나 니메리.
카르람나니
코 카르람나 빅차 차카요 마레. 소소 컨트롤 온나 케차 몽보 시그널 케차 빅차 찬로. 소소 셈 jelol 데토나 kacha karamna kacha 빅차도 체요 마르갈 노 마레. 페셰고.
Yeah, so if you have a peaceful mind, right, whatever someone says to you, if they're saying bad things to you, it doesn't matter, right? In that example, right, that it doesn't actually hurt you. It's only hurting you because you're getting angry. In the example of someone saying bad things to you, right? So that's the idea.
Pena zopa gomdeni china pashoningal kesat kati dikchachilana lakpan chitana lapi jakwata kul kesat dikchala ni chichapariyo manga no yoma. A control ni china lapa galatini control khmalta mi jamba lavia tlishu control. Ni picture to sonal moment do. Tonda chuchu chil mendai ting ta ta jando te control gongram ngse go kariyore kecha sheni chik ta ze go yo ma kecha shi ton noria samla te ni menda gi jando te control go mi taslan ro yo ra ese ko control je ting yo pakia ting ki bare te pe sa sare.
So like for example, if you're practicing patience and someone is saying, you know, bad things to you, it's just wind, really. It's not hurting me, it's not hurting me, right? But if you get angry and you talk back, then you know maybe you're going to fight and you're going to shoot each other or something, right? And then of course it escalates things.
A
different perspective that I would add, as someone who had to protect others as part of my career over the years, you know, anger would only cloud my judgment. You know, if you have to do what you have to do, you want to do it with clear, like, no anger, no attachment to it. And seeing part of the practice early on is someone who say is a sniper, they are going to right here, sniper right here, they are going to try to keep their mind as peaceful as possible. They're going to do the job that they have to do without any attachment, any aversion or hate. It's just what needs to be done in that moment. You know? It's not quite a Buddhist perspective, but there are Buddhists among us who have had to do these jobs. So, even His Holiness recognizes that, you know. So, yeah, you know, I had a feeling we had a couple of military people in here.
Thank you. Very good.
Yeah.
Huh?
He has his hand up first.
Practically, how would one go about meditating compassion?
Also the countries the Ningde countries come.
Nije gom zeyat tanga so abje gom jabde zeyat nije gom zeyat lokare. Nije gom zeyat ta takishya na jare pashola semchan samata nije zeyat semchan langom gore ma to jamba tata shili nije gom zeyat. Basho te an dekhi chi yonan rigde samgore ngaya dekhi yona ga samgore pasho ya dinga mando na ga gore ngaya dinga mando na da. Te maze nga so kin so te paya tu de gore te tu de gore. Ninga so paya de potan te de potan da ni paya po chi te ta ta se ya po yon ka bore ta paya po chi che to na ta ya shore san ni sem chen tam cha mesa ta se na ko ti po chi yon na ga wa ta tilan cha to da la so pa no sem sawa ni ma chen ni geda ga samlo ta le ni je gom ze gore ma ni je gom ja ze ti de ke cha mar.
So when we talk about the word meditating in English is a little tricky because we immediately think we're like sitting here, doing placement meditation. But in Tibetan Buddhism, it doesn't necessarily mean that. It's really kind of, the word in meditation is cultivation. So it's really, you don't have to think, I have to sit down and meditate. It's really thinking about these things. And what you think about to meditate on compassion is sort of like what we talked about in the beginning, is this idea that mutual dependence or mutual helping each other, right? So you can understand that you're constantly being depending on, in the sense of being helped by other people, and you're helping other people. You also could really think about how we're all the same, and this is His Holiness the Dalai Lama talks about this all the time. One way to really think about this is that we're all the same in the sense of every day, all the time, we're trying to have happiness and we're trying to avoid suffering. And every single sentient being around us is trying to have happiness and trying to avoid suffering, right? So we're all exactly the same in this thing, and whatever we're doing, that's what we're trying to do. And so when you think about compassion, it's sort of one way to think about it is this meditating, contemplating this mutual dependence or mutual aid, and also this idea that we're all basically the same. We're all trying to do the same thing in our lives, even though we're going about it perhaps in very different ways. But again, you don't have to sit, it doesn't have to be sort of sitting there on the floor doing this. This is something you can do just anytime.
Serious. Last. Ani?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So in Buddhist definition about anger, it all leads to make people want to harm others.
The control technique, the same job.
Control the Jangachi Tandang sociology Kare Lekachi Cheondi, Telamundo Pishi Chembo Chichinita, Pachi Katin Rochi Chando Kasamlojira, Sim Donia, that's him down the Atrion, the Penny Samloji.
The control the new sim,
no sim that a control the control Tama no sim in Samaro.
So maybe I may have misspoken when I said that may.
No similar country in Laos.
We can say that that's true, but maybe not every mind of anger is this mind of harming others. But we also could think about this anger as a sense of this mind that disturbs. It's a mind that disturbs our mind as well.
Yeah, because in the beginning of this question, it's all the anger we need to try to.
Yeah, I mean, Geshe, very much from the Buddhist perspective, all anger is bad.
Yeah, but like for example, sometimes the kids get really naughty, and the parents get angry about kids' behavior.
Sure.
But they don't want to harm them. They just try to warn them. So
sometimes the bubu the be tripped out the yeni pame techo consola the lung langi in the lung lang be gumsin the nusimare pinyagi chedu the teto the lung langi.
Tete Tara no sim the control your lower. Tanda Nijikani law race, in a Gikalon Nijeta, Tikikalon control in lower. No sim yosu. Shindo and Zondo that in Yora. They control in lower.
The ninja
Gikani law. At Savi Sound Road, Nijeta, Pennsylvania, Katukatula, no sim legures.
So Yeah, I mean, this is a tricky example because yes, the root desire, the root motivation is this love, but through that love, you do get angry, and there is this sort of basic mind that's wanting to sort of harm. So the Ningje te gangla the nutsum chung gegiris.
di kalon se tinele sawi chani ninje tele ra ina ti ramba ni pa khatu lo no sem dele
Okay, yeah, that's what I said. Yeah.
di kalon da ti
Yeah.
kalon la
So the root thing is love, but from that comes this mind of anger, which is this mind that wants to harm.
My father says that anger is like taking poison yourself and expecting the other person to die.
The kongcho di bayere nge kongcho double karere sena dinga tuk sena yang na di te wangi mission la di nubache samodangiere.
re
Yeah.
asa ta ja go sara ti so ya zo
Yeah. So we'll stop there. Thank you.
tu che ta
Thanks
to
for
namba so
coming.
ti che
Thank you for coming. We made it without.
no
Bye.
Thank you.
tu che te dele
Bye bye.